Welcome back to the Purple Political Breakdown. How's it going? How's your day been? We are back at it again. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have another great podcast episode. As today we're going to step out of the typical boundaries of domestic politics, which I'm sure you guys heard a lot from me as of the recent year, so to speak. Well, we're going to go more broad and focus on international affairs and no, not domestic, but international issues that are taking place that I don't think gets highlighted as often, despite everything that goes on in America. And we think that we are the center of the universe. A lot of people have other issues going on around the world. And I do think there is very important conversations to have there. So, in order to have this conversation in regards to some of the things that you may not know about in regards to human rights issues, deforestation, and the coffee industry, I have a great guest. I'm allowed her to introduce herself. Atel, who are you, and why are you here today?
I'm Italie Gonnet. I am the founder and director of a new NGO that's called Coffee Watch, which is now just turned 15 months old. So we're still a toddler, but we have already, sued some of the world's biggest coffee companies for slavery and human trafficking and done a lot of reports. And my dream is to make the coffee industry truly good, like to make the world a better place with every cup and get rid of all this crazy shit that's in our coffee, like slavery and trafficking and child labor and, you know, deforestation and horrible abuse of unionizing workers. And it doesn't have to be that way. It can be so great. It could really be good. And that's my dream.
All right. I'm very interested to dive into that in a little bit more depth because, of course, I drink coffee. I'm trying to scale back because I don't want to be too caffeinated all the time, but it's not something that I looked into in terms of their practices, of course. And I do intuitionally understand that there are certain goods that come into the country that are made elsewhere that have very different rules on how they conduct themselves. And that just kind of takes into the conversation on why America to do certain things versus what other countries can do because they can lax a lot of their human rights laws and the amount of people and how they treat their people in general. So before we get into that, I always ask this question for my guests. What is something that makes you relatable? What is a hobby you enjoy? What makes you just like the average person? I always ask this. I repeat this every time. People should get used to this by now. But oftentimes, when it comes down to talking politics or talking these more very complicated issues, people don't realize that the people talking about it are humans themselves. They just care about this, so that's why that they're going over it. So it just makes you a little bit more normal to the average person, so to speak.
Riddell, I want to share with you my favorite hobbies and also maybe my most shameful secret, which is
All
that
right.
although I absolutely love kayaking and hiking and pretty much any outdoor sport will float my boat, although kayaking and hiking are my favorites. I love snowshoeing and all that stuff. If you try to make me exercise indoors, it gives me this uncomfortable feeling of being an incarcerated gerbil. And basically, I would rather be like a decadent piglet and do almost nothing than exercise indoors. So I do have these wonderful outdoor sporting hobbies. But yeah, the moments in my life where I've not been able to do those things, I just turn into a little piglet.
That's interesting. I've never heard someone say that before. I personally have no issue with working out indoors. I
Really?
probably honestly prefer it
You
because
like it?
AC
Oh
is
no, now I'm
on, you
so
know.
embarrassed.
No, you're fine. There's everybody has their difference of opinion. Some people like running. I hate running. I find it super boring. I can't do
Running
it.
outdoors or running on a treadmill?
Just running, period. I need something a
Period,
little bit more
okay.
dynamic. I
Running
prefer
on a treadmill, oh
basketball
my
to like
god, so boring, I'm with you, but outdoors, you get to see cool stuff, you know?
fair. I'm not much of the sightseer. I don't really
You like
absorb
to
the
just
great
be in a
sights.
groove.
Yeah, it's but I think that's very interesting. I prefer working out indoors personally, but I think people probably will be able to relate to that. There's like sessions where people are working outdoors, doing yoga outdoors. It feels good, especially if you live in a good environment. I don't know about working outdoors when you live in I don't know, freaking New York in the snowstorm.
Even in New York, no joke, I would like there was a snowstorm. I just put a message at the bottom of my building, and one of our very nice neighbors lent me these little snowshoes, and I was able to like go snowshoeing into Central Park and exercise that way.
I respect it.
So, yeah, outdoors is it's what floats my boat, basically.
You know what? I respect. I definitely respect it. Um, so to get into the conversation,
Yeah.
I guess it's important to establish like what are you doing exactly. You mentioned you're part of an NGA called Coffee Watch. We'll start off with that. What is Coffee Watch? What do you guys do?
Okay, that's a great question. The simplest way I can describe Coffee Watch, it's as if Amnesty International and Greenpeace dated, hooked up, had a baby, and that baby just wanted to work on coffee. And I should say, I used to work at Human Rights Watch and Amnesty and Greenpeace, and those places really formatted me. And that's how I essentially learned to turn this passion to make the world a better place into like a very concrete, real profession where you dig in and you learn how to campaign and research human rights and environmental issues in a more professional, focused, strategic way. So essentially, I took all that experience that I had from also, I used to work in 2 war crimes tribunals when I was younger. Um, yeah, all that experience from human rights and environmental NGOs, and I brought it all to make Coffee Watch because Riddell, people do not know this, but coffee is like the effing Hunger Games. We have all
Mm.
these people in the global north drinking this delightful, delicious coffee in these really nice, cute cafes or restaurants or hotels or at home, and like comfortable in their jammies or whatever. But actually, that coffee that we are drinking, whether we're in Denmark, where I'm based now, or in the US or wherever, it comes from unimaginably bad practices for the most part. There's like a 98% chance if you drink coffee that you're drinking poverty, and a 50% chance you're drinking extreme poverty. And there's probably a 50% chance you're drinking child labor. And I'm not talking like nice, like cool things that young teenagers get to do for fun. No, this is backbreaking, horrible crap that the ILO would probably characterize as hazardous child labor. Like the shit that goes on in our coffee, we're talking about sexual violence and exploitation, even rape of women coffee workers. When people try to unionize, they get like killed and threatened and attacked and harassed. The coffee industry, it's like the Hunger Games. You're drinking from like District 9, District 12. It's crazy. What goes on is crazy. Why is that allowed? How is that the world that we live in? It's 2026.
Yeah. It does highlight something that I wasn't paying attention to. So I do appreciate the thought process. It is oftentimes difficult to always focus on some things that are going on in like other places, especially considering all the
It's true.
issues having in like America and by extension because America has problems, the rest of the world has
Yes.
problems.
Yes.
So that's just kind of how it is. But I do think there's a few things that I want to also clear with people because I like to really make like not reframe narratives, but like provide a level of understanding from based off like preconceived misunderstandings, if that makes
Yeah,
sense. So
yeah, totally.
when people hear the term NGOs, there's typically a very negative connotation. It is very clearly been bastardized as a term of like this like shady purposes of being an NGO. So can you explain what an NGO is and why basically in your case it's good for what you're doing in particular?
Yeah, well, I think that, originally the idea of an NGO, it literally stands for non-governmental organization. So the idea originally was, okay, well, if the government is not going to do something to fix a problem, whether it's racism or sexism or pollution or inequality, then like somehow civil society has to step up and you can create these things called NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and you can apply for a tax exempt status. In the US, that would be a 501c3, and you basically don't make money, but you just try to make positive change. The problem is that so many really like pernicious forces actually set up these astroturf NGOs. So you have, the oil and gas industry, for example, pouring money into kind of, I don't want to say fake NGOs, but because they're genuinely NGOs, but they're terrible. They could be like peddling misinformation or, so I think that NGOs have often been weaponized by, I mean, how should I say this? Like far right extremist groups, religious extremist groups. You can see, people who are like insane about something like fluoride, like don't put fluoride in the water. And then they get lots of weird money from like weird billionaires and suddenly they're an NGO. So, okay, anyways, there are bad NGOs in the world. It's a problem the way that maybe there's inadequate regulation of the sector. And I think it's also in a way sad that so many people try to make the world a better place through NGOs instead of the government, because we've kind of given up on the government fixing a lot of our problems, right? But in my case, like the reason I started this NGO Coffee Watch, it's because there are no governments that are really working to change and clean up the coffee industry, even though it's the number 6 driver of deforestation in the world. Number 6, literally. That's pretty bad. I mean, it's not as bad as number 1, which is cattle, but or like, the top 4 are basically cattle, palm oils, pulp and paper, and soy. But it's number 6. That's pretty scary. That's bad. Why isn't, and governments aren't taking care of that, just like they're epically failing to deal with human rights abuses and poverty in coffee. And so the only avenue to really push for change that felt strategic and that had a chance of winning, I thought, was setting up this NGO.
Fair enough. Other than, and this is the second question in regards to NGOs. Other than the intent, so what your purpose is, which as of right now seems very clear to me at the very least. But in general, is there anything else that distinguishes your NGO versus the NGOs you're referring to, like the oil NGOs that you were talking about? Is there anything different that you guys are doing compared to them?
So we don't take any money from companies or governments at all. 0. So we just like can't be bought by Starbucks or whatever big coffee company. And also, the whole point of Coffee Watch is to investigate both environmental and social abuses in coffee, like to go undercover in coffee producing countries in Brazil, Colombia, China, Mexico, Kenya, Uganda, Costa Rica, places like that, to investigate and then write reports about our findings about these crimes and abuses, and literally sue. We have launched like strategic litigation in both the US and Germany against major coffee companies for abuses like modern slavery and human trafficking, which it's crazy, but that is like a thing in coffee, a really common thing. Unfortunately, it's insane. I know. I can see the look on your face, and probably your listeners too are like, what? But Radel, if you think about it, it's not just coffee, right? Our apparel, our clothes are often made from sweatshops, our sneakers often made from sweatshops. Think about our like watches and phones and computers and stuff that are sometimes made in places in China where people cannot unionize. They work 7 days a week sometimes, like crazy bad conditions. I think most Americans kind of know in a way in their hearts that we are in the Hunger Games, that the food they eat, the coffee they drink, the clothes they wear, the electronics they use, they know something is messed up with how that stuff is made, whether it's in Mexico or China or Brazil or whatever. It's just not something that we talk about in America. It's not something that political parties deal with at all, because they're all like colluding, I think, to just keep going with this unjust system.
So I think there's three routes, not three routes. There is three phases of this conversation that I do think will be very productive.
Yes.
First, outlining the problems in a more expansive way. What exactly is going on, so people understand the issues that are taking place. And the second part of the conversation, I want to really clear out the best way to reach out to people, because you mentioned something interesting, which I do agree with to an extent, is that people generally feel like there's something going on, but they cannot truly, one, encapsulate
Yes.
the full context, and
Yes.
two, resonate with the circumstance.
Exactly.
Um, it's like the situation that's happened recently with the cut for US aid. A lot of people are
Yes.
losing food, and a lot of people don't care because they can't really relate to it. So we'll go into that other phases, like how to message to them, how to for the how to make, not even make them, but understand the atrocities and humanize it a little bit so people kind of feel what's going on. And then we'll end the conversation with focusing on what can we do, what solutions can we put in place, what
Yes.
different ways can we put things in place that are fixing these issues, but at the same time, I think like very important part of the conversation consistently is, people still want to drink coffee, so
Oh,
we
totally. Me too.
we want to keep the coffee industry still going in
Yes,
some way.
you do. Riddell, I have to say, I'm really glad you said all of that because I 110% believe we can change the coffee industry and make it good. Like, if I didn't think that, I would not have started Coffee Watch. I don't like losing. I like winning campaigns. I like making the world a better place. If I thought this was not a realistic possibility on the table, I would
Mhm.
not be doing any of the work. I truly believe we can change the industry, and there's so many good things that people can do. And I feel like most people listening to your show, apart from maybe some Nazi adjacent billionaires, are actually like good people who would never walk into a coffee shop and say, "Oh, please give me a dead jaguar with my flat white," or "I'd like a little more child slavery with that cappuccino and like an extra shot of union busting." Nobody says things like that. They don't want
Yeah,
that.
I would
Most
agree.
of
Yeah.
the listeners are like nice, normal humans who care about making the world a better place. They just don't know how to do that through their coffee and maybe other things too. So I'm super glad that you talked about this narrative arc of like mapping out the problems, talking about what it really means and why we should care, and then ending with like how we fix this, because I 100% agree.
All right. Well, let's get into it. So you've mentioned a couple of things that is like going on. And I've read some of the things that you guys had as well. But I want to give you the opportunity to kind of explain, like, what exactly is happening. Why is the coffee industry causing these issues that you've mentioned?
Well, first I should say I love coffee and I drink coffee every morning. My husband makes me a coffee. You drink coffee, we all drink coffee. This is not about hating on coffee drinkers, or as you said, Riddell, this is not about hating on the idea of an industry of coffee. I dream of there being a great coffee industry, actually. So let's start with that. And then the next important thing is to talk about like the volume. People are literally more likely to drink coffee than pray or exercise. Like, it's crazy. We drink a lot of coffee. Apparently 2.2 billion cups a day. That's a lot of cups of coffee. I mean, you and I are probably one tiny part of that manifestation, right? Coffee is one of the most commonly consumed foodstuffs in the world. It's one of the top traded commodities. It's huge. And because so many people drink so much of it because it tastes so nice and it's so like nice to help wake you up in the morning with this delightful cup of Joe, we have 12.5 million farms with 25 million farmers in the world, give or take, and about 100 million farm workers. And that would be fine if they were earning anything close to a living income. But actually, almost all of them are in some sort of poverty. None of them earn a living income. When I say none, I like mean a vanishingly small percent do, but it's like 99.9% of coffee farmers do not earn a living income, especially when you also factor in the farm workers, right? These are some of the poorest people in the world. And because half of them are in extreme poverty on a bad year, and so many of them are in poverty, and none of them are earning a living income, That's why we have child labor. Riddell, these are nice, normal people. They're not sadists or like child abusers or anything. They're just totally nice. They're like you and me. They're normal people. They have their kids working, doing hazardous child labor, like heavy loads, sharp objects, toxic chemicals. Why? Because they can't afford to feed their family otherwise. When I say they're not earning a living income, I mean like literally a living income is you have food, a basic roof over your head, basic medical care. It's not university. It's not a McMansion. It's not a car. It's just the absolute basics. And because we have so many people drinking so much coffee, that's why there's so many farmers and farm workers in poverty. And that poverty brings with it not just child labor, but a really high vulnerability to human trafficking, to forced labor, to modern slavery, bonded labor. If you're a woman farm worker, there's no unions. You're making like sometimes less than $2.15 a day. Of course, you're vulnerable to sexual harassment and rape. We've documented that at Coffee Watch. I'm not making this shit up. This is scary, bad shit. And the truth is, this is kind of the norm of how the coffee industry operates. It's not the exception. If you just drink regular coffee, you're drinking that. But it doesn't have to be that way. Other industries have changed. We know it's possible to change industries at scale, and coffee can change too. We have so many solutions.
All right, very interesting. Um, when it comes down to a situation like this, I'm definitely know that it can be very difficult for um, making change to a country that's not yours, basically.
Of course.
And in a situation like this, from my understanding, you were talking about countries like different other countries that are like producing this stuff, and then of course the a lot of the normal coffee drinkers typically is a lot of us from the West that are can have that luxury. So when it comes down to these countries that are having these issues and that are having these people in this extreme situation, what are they doing? Are they doing anything, or what is preventing them for helping their own people?
A lot of the coffee producing countries are very vulnerable countries that have civil wars, cartels, poverty. Think about Ethiopia, the birthplace of coffee, right? It's used to be the top exporter. Uganda just outstripped it. But in Africa, it was the behemoth, right? It's still huge. Like coffee is an enormous part of Ethiopian culture and GDP and employment and all that. Ethiopia's had so many civil wars. They recently had a civil war with Tigray where like I think around 600,000 people are thought to have died and basically been killed in that war. Then you
Mhm.
have coffee producing countries like Colombia, which had a civil war until recently. And still to this day, big parts of Colombia are controlled by cartels. Think about Mexico, close to home, right? For a lot of American listeners, some of the most productive coffee comes from Chiapas in Mexico. It's like the top coffee producing region of Mexico. 40% of Chiapas is controlled by the cartels. So a lot of coffee producing countries are not really robust countries that have a huge amount of money and time and manpower to investigate and crack down on abuses, right? That's just like maybe not a short term reality, right? But think about it this way, Riddell. It's not really their problem. These are American, European, and Swiss companies going down to these places, setting up these systems of exploitation, extracting the coffee, bringing it back to American and European and Swiss consumers. Half of global coffee is traded in Switzerland because, like, it's a tax haven. But America is the number one coffee consuming country in the world. This is our fault. This is not like their problem. This is our problem. They are making coffee not for themselves, for us. We need to change our laws. Why don't we have a law in America that says you cannot bring this shit to us if it has slavery, rape, and child labor? That's a low bar. That's like not like, oh, if it's regenerative and everyone's happy and singing kumbaya. Why does America have no laws like that? We have this like sort of law customs can stop products from entering the US if there's forced labor in them. And Coffee Watch used that to file a complaint with CBP, with customs. But customs, like, they don't have the money. They're not set up to investigate. We had to present all the evidence to them. That's crazy. Why is the US government not investigating cargo ships that come to America? And not just with coffee, but with cocoa and palm oil and sneakers and apparel and electronics. Like, American law is set up to create this exploitation in the global south. Do you know what I mean? It's our problem. It's not their problem. I mean, of course, it's also their problem, but it is also ours.
Right. So that's very interesting. I'll say this. When it comes down to the issues and the problems that you're portraying, I think people are beginning to understand when you have a circumstance where, other entities from different countries that have like corporations or very, very wealthy people are able to put shop at certain locations. They can and really just like feed on the workforce and lower the wages and lower
Yes.
the kind of human rights. You think everybody kind of realizes that's plausible. I mean, the
Yes.
general intuition from most people regarding voting is that, hey, stop doing things outside the country, bring it
Yeah,
here. So in general, people already know this
that's
type of
right.
stuff is happening. And if you don't have the certain pressures because of an unstable country and unstable government, you can realize how very bad people will take advantage of that system. And in therefore, the people there will be not really benefiting from the new business, but also in a dire situation with not much wealth being kind of propagated in the area. So generally, this
Exactly.
concept should make sense to people. If you want more information about it, like statistics, anecdotes, very clear studies that you mentioned that you brought to the table before, you can check out your website, I'm sure. Is there any other place, if people wanted more information about this, they could check out from you?
Yes, Redell, one thing that we did at Coffee Watch is on our website, we created a whole hub where we try to elevate and showcase all the work of sister organizations and journalists that also expose these abuses. Because to be honest, this amazing stuff that other people did was just sitting in dusty drawers, getting no attention whatsoever. So we put together in one place on our website the best reports from Oxfam, for example, about forced labor in Brazil, the best report from WWF, World Wildlife Fund, about deforestation in Indonesian coffee that's destroying tiger and elephant habitat and rhino habitat, basically killing these animals and taking over national parks. All of these like amazing journalists and organizations that publish stuff about what's wrong with coffee, we put that into one place on our website. And then next to it, you have our reports that we did based on our investigations in China, which, wow, that was kind of scary. Mexico, also a little dicey security situation, Colombia and Brazil. And yeah, so you can see all of that in one place because you're right. Intuitively, people know something's off, but then they don't have this precise information that brings it all to life. So we tried to put it all in one place. Also, all the videos, there are like a dozen documentary films that have been made where, oh my God, it's on film. You can see it. The kids, the pesticides, the slavery. There's an Al Jazeera documentary that follows this amazing guy, Jorge, in Brazil, who finds people who are in modern slavery and calls the authority and organizes for them to get rescued from slavery. Coffee is one of the top drivers of slavery in Brazil. So Jorge and his team, their like whistleblowing and investigations, it has led to half of the official rescues, which is like 3,200 people being rescued from coffee slavery.
All right, shout out to them for sure.
Amazing.
Um,
Shout out. They're like superheroes, honestly. Like Clark Kent, move over. It's Jorge.
doing good work. I always respect people like that who's willing to go out, get out there. So we outlined the issues that exist and the data where you can collect it from. I think for the most part, other than very clear bad actors, this is not something you can deny or argue against if they are happening in real time and you can see it or read it. But the next part about it is the really resonating with the people, like you said, that are here, that are consuming the product, that are benefiting from the product, that basically control the coffee market. If us coffee consumers were not drinking it, and of course, a lot of our governments, America, the European countries, we kind of like dictate a lot of this stuff. If we are not making an action, if we're not doing anything, then nobody's doing anything. So in order for the governments to be pressured, the people have to care. So for that to happen, when it comes down to it, how do you plan to really resonate with the people? How do you make them care about this situation? Because I do think, at the very least, from an American perspective, I don't know what's going on. I have like a general intuition in some countries, but I don't want to say this for certain. But there has been a growing, more, dare I say, nationalist sentiment of just focus on what's going on here. I don't care about everybody else. So, how do you resonate with the people, and make them care, or at the very least, convince them to care?
Okay. I would say, even if it doesn't matter to you that someone suffered so much to give that cup that you're drinking to you for your morning jolt of energy, then think about it this way. There are millions of coffee farmers and farm workers all across Central America, right? Most of them are at poverty or extreme poverty levels. Let's just like put numbers onto that. Poverty is set at like $3 a day. Just imagine living on $3 a day. And extreme poverty is defined by the World Bank as $2.15 a day. If you like, that's just so little money. If people who are on that level of poverty, they're very vulnerable, right? Okay. So there's these millions of people who are extremely poor all across Central America, either farming or harvesting our coffee for us. Now factor in the deforestation. Coffee is the number 6 driver of deforestation in the world. When you deforest, that means you change not just like the ecosystem, but the weather. The soil moisture dries out, the air moisture dries out, it changes rainfall patterns, it dries out the whole region. And then what happens is when you put together A and B, A being climate change and B being deforestation, together they force multiply and you start getting crop failures, right? Especially when you have monoculture coffee instead of shade-grown coffee. Monoculture is like when you've cut everything down as opposed to having lots and lots of trees in and around your coffee. And the industry's been pressuring these Central American coffee farmers to go for monoculture, pesticides of monoculture. When you have monoculture and you get like the double whammy of climate change and the weather craziness from deforestation, all of a sudden, superstorms, droughts, heat domes, your coffee starts to fail. We already have seen there's been these waves of failures, like crop failures in coffee in Central America. When that happens, people go bust. If you're earning $3 a day and your crop fails, you can't just like wait for another year or something. It literally means your kids are going to starve. Where do you think those people go?
Mm-hmm.
Where do they go? They go north. They cross the Rio Grande. They come to work in America, and then we put them in like detention centers and arrest their kids. Okay, so like I think my point is, when we try to outsource and export all this environmental and social harms and say like, la 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 la, see no evil, hear no evil, it's not happening, I don't want to look at it, it's not my problem. Actually, oh my God, it will bite us in the ass so hard because of course it's our problem. And I will add, America is filled with coffee shops. How many of your friends and family have worked as baristas or in the hospitality industry where the coffee is a big part of their business? For me, for sure, a lot. My cousin runs a restaurant and one of my cousins is been a waiter. I mean, like, So if we have crop failures, then we have these price hikes, market shocks, people will lose their jobs. Like millions of people will lose their jobs. This is this, yeah, maybe someone doesn't care about like a kid in Brazil being denied their future and being trafficked into a horrible farm where they're kept in a shack that's like barely fit for animals. They don't have any running water or bathroom, and their papers get confiscated and they're threatened with physical violence if they try to leave. Maybe you don't care about that kid. Although I think you kind of should, because they're like us, they're our brothers and sisters, these people. But
Mhm.
even if you don't care about them, like care about the repercussions in America.
Yeah, and I do think that's a very potent point. It is unfortunate how oftentimes when you try to resonate with very simple, dare I say, love thy neighbor concepts, that it's just met with crazy backlash. And it can be pretty infuriating. So you have to play into the things that they do want. And I do think you perfectly encapsulate the idea that we're the ones who are dictating the market for these places, and our billionaires, our corporations are sending people over there. So if we are the ones making things worse to the point where they have to leave for a better life, where do you think they're going to go? And I think that's pretty clear considering how much people hate immigrants nowadays and just like don't come in my country. Well, don't ruin their country. How about that?
Exactly. Exactly. I think you said it better than all of it. Okay, just please delete everything I said, and that sums it up.
Um, yeah, sometimes you do have to play into their egos a little bit for them to understand the grander implications regarding what is going on. And there will always be a conversation on the severity and the scope of impact. But in general, understanding that you are not detached from what is going on, you are part of the situation, is valuable. And I do think that's what that sentiment brings out. So if we are able to make them understand that you're generally, not individually, generally, you would have an impact on like the market and what's going on, and potentially the influx of immigrants potentially as well as the acceptance of corporations doing their manufacturing, I believe is a buzzword, but manufacturing outside of the country. Well, pressure them to make sure they're doing things right, so all these things don't make your life harder, so to speak, at the very least in your opinion. Then there's the other crop of people who are more reasonable and like more humanitarian, or like, yeah, I do care, I do want these people to better lives, I would want to help, but how do I? Like, what can I do? I'm just one random person. And especially the people who don't have a lot of money themselves that are just trying to skate on by, like, what actually can I do? What can I advocate for? What could I like retweet? What can I say to my politician? Like, what do you want from me? So that other people who probably would do something if they could, but feel like they can't, how would you communicate to them?
I would say you have this immense, beautiful power that probably a lot of people don't want you to know that you have that power, but you for sure have it. Trust me. There's so many things you can do. Number one, social media, whatever brand of coffee you drink, just take a picture of yourself drinking that coffee and message that company. Every time you go get a coffee, message that company and say, "Hey, what's up? Just wanted you to know I'm like dissatisfied with your human rights and environmental commitments. What are you going to do to make this better?" And every time you get a coffee, just like push. And honestly, coffee companies are so sensitive about their brands, way more than a lot of other industries. In that sense, coffee kind of reminds me of fashion. Like toilet paper is not a very brand sensitive space, right? Or like uh, your milk, it's not very brand sensitive, but coffee, very brand sensitive. So when customers go on social media and like write messages to the companies, especially when they show that they are consumers, like angry, sad, frustrated consumers who yearn for something better, this goes straight up the chain. Like, and And it's kind of a numbers game. If you do it by yourself, it won't make a difference. But at Coffee Watch, we went from 0 to 3.3 million views in like 15 months. And so you're not alone. Just join the movement, get on social media and start messaging coffee companies. And if you have the time and energy, do it with all the companies that you care about and that you know. Like, just message them. Go on their social and message them. That's number one. Number two, change your coffee. You don't have to change it all the time. I will tell you like a dirty secret, which is I have a toddler and sometimes I'm super exhausted and I'll just get whatever coffee is closest because I'm so desperately exhausted because he's been sick and I'm sick and he brought home a virus from daycare and I'm like, kill me now. But in general, even though I sometimes slip and just buy whatever when I'm out and super exhausted, I try to buy from the heart. I buy mindfully. I buy coffee that aligns with my values. There is for sure ethical coffee out there. Sofia Vergara, she has this Dios Mio coffee, which at a minimum is empowering women. And women are really screwed in coffee for the most part. So that's a good thing. There are companies that do organic, which at least at a minimum means there's no chemicals. I mean, it's not perfect because it would be good if they did other stuff too, but buy better coffee. And it's not just for you. Change whatever institution you're in. Are you in a university? Are you in a church? Are you in a mosque? Are you in an office? Are you in a bowling club? Like, whatever the F you're in, change that coffee. And probably if you have a reasonable conversation with whoever's in charge of the coffee, like, you can change their mind. They also don't want to be drinking slavery and dead jaguars and child labor. If they knew, they wouldn't buy that stuff. So you can become like a ambassador for change, and your cup of coffee makes a big difference. But if it's your whole school or your whole office every day, that adds up. And then you're really like an ambassador for industry change. And the beauty of it is that most of your viewers are not living in North Korea or Russia or Vietnam, where we would, if we were having this conversation, you and I would both be in jail, or China, we'd be like direct into a prison. And so because most of us living in democratic places where you can still, for however long, say your piece to your elected officials, that's the other magic superpower that your listeners probably have. They can like just send a message. It can be online, on their website, on their social. You can call their office, call your elected representative, and let's just say something. It doesn't even matter. Just say like, I listened to this podcast by this amazing guy, Riddell, and I was horrified to find out our coffee is messed up. What are you going to do about this? That's all. That makes a huge difference. For real. Like, it does.
All right, fair enough. Um, I do like the ideas that you're pushing out. It's just really just trying to m- spread awareness is the general sentiment from my understanding, and I do think there's a lot to that. Sometimes people get black pill thinking that my dollar or my action doesn't really mean anything, but when it comes down to solutions, it's all about like notoriety, notability, making it seem like it actually is an issue in the first place. Will potentially either change perceptions or make people think twice, and that comes a long way. So I do think there's some value to that, of course, especially for the average person who can't really afford to be the savior of an industry, but they can be a part of a solution. But things that are much more substantive regarding changing the industry, it would require a certain level of reform, or at the very least, some industry change. So things like that. What would be certain ways that the government or the industry has to change, but change in a way that doesn't completely destroy the coffee industry or completely
Mhm.
curve it to the point where people can't like walk out and get a cup of Joe if they're, like you said, in your situation, super tired.
Riddell, I will share a number that will blow your mind. Most experts think that in order to make a cup of coffee sustainable, which means like human rights, living income, no deforestation, really crack down on all those things like modern slavery and human trafficking and child labor, it's 2 to 3 cents more per cup. I will just say that again because it's crazy. We're talking about increasing the price of coffee by 2 to 3 cents. That's nothing. This is not like making it $2 more expensive. Trump's tariffs just made coffee like $2 more expensive. Do you remember
That
that? Like, yeah, and people still bought coffee exactly the same quantity as before. Coffee is an inelastic thing, right? There's this huge demand. People are addicted. It's a drug. It's a delicious drug. But the amount of money that industry would need to spend to go clean is very little. So I think the key is the industry has to feel this pressure from consumers and feel like it is not acceptable. Do you remember, you're probably younger than me, I'm such a dinosaur, but do you remember when, like, before Nelson Mandela was freed, South Africa was this pariah state? And like South Africans, everyone, if you told someone you were from South Africa, like it would totally change how they saw you. And like there were boycotts of South African goods and there were protests in front of the South African embassy. And it became just this like toxic thing, like being a Nazi, basically, right? Do you remember that? Like, we don't even have to get close to that level of opprobrium to change the coffee industry. I think they're so brand sensitive. They don't want to lose customers. They don't want their customers to know that there's kids and slaves and dead jaguars in your latte. They don't want you to know at all. The second they feel like the cat is coming out of the bag, they'll change. They will pay those 2 or 3 extra cents. I'm sure of it. And then from the government side, Riddell, we filed something called the 307 petition with Customs, with U.S. Customs, CBP. And actually, we've now filed several. But we publicly filed one of them. And if we win, or I should say, if CBP finds in our favor, if they go through all the evidence that we provided and they decide like, ooh, this is extremely credible and we're going to investigate and we check every box, this is all correct. If they find in our favor, then they will block coffee from this company called Cochupe. That's the biggest like coffee cooperative in Brazil that has so many instances of forced labor in it and things like that have been reported. And I think if that happens, then it will send a shockwave through the coffee industry because companies don't want their shipments to be blocked at all. They don't want to run that risk. So then I think they will all just clean up their act, actually. So I think if the US government stepped up and did its job for investigations in a way that right now CBP like doesn't have the right to, basically. CBP's kind of hands are tied right now. You have to, as an NGO, you have to like provide all the evidence to them. If we changed our system so that the American government could investigate, oh my God, then this would like, I would not have a work anymore.
Well, it's probably gonna be a while before anything like that gets.
It's gonna be a while. When that happens, I'll come find you and like pay your margarita on a beach somewhere.
Hey, we did it. We did it. I think there's a lot of very interesting things that you pronounce, and it is sometimes funny how like slight increases to like the prices of things can really make a large difference. And I know people complain about certain things like a increase on tax for here and there, but the comparative analysis that you brought out in terms of how tariffs are just raising prices, because as I say every time, it's actually affecting consumers. It's not affecting these countries. They're not paying any tax. It's funny how in certain circumstances that people may complain, but they'll still buy the product. But if there was a slight increase and you can provide a lot of value from that, because 2 cents from you, and then you like expand that for like millions of people buying it, that's a lot of money,
Oh,
all
yes,
things
that's a huge
considered.
amount of money. Yeah. I should say in the aggregate, it's huge. It's just when you buy the cup that it's small.
Exactly. And it's just like adding that quick help. That's why, I'm not trying to, I don't get brownie points for it, but I never really see a big deal where I'm like buying something. It's like, hey, you want to donate? I'm like, sure, why not? It's just a couple of cents. It's not a big deal. Obviously, it can come a long way, but it is interesting how there's a level of stigma behind the idea of like why you asked me to give you like 17 cents. No, I'm not giving you 17 cents.
Mm.
I find that fascinating. So there there needs to be like a, I guess I wouldn't say there needs to be a unique way because I don't want to manipulate the people, but I do want them to understand the larger implications, and maybe a level of transparency and authenticity will bridge that gap for them to understand this is for a good cause. Because sometimes when there is that, oh, this goes to XY charity or whatever, they have no idea what this charity is. They don't know where the money's going. A lot of people lost faith in a lot of like NGOs and charities in general. So they feel like their money's being used for the wrong purposes. So it's interesting. I do think there's a lot of validity to what you're saying, and it can come a long way. It just needs to, use the power of social media and media in general and like brand notoriety to not only expose what is going on, but also make it very clear that this is what it's for, and it's for a good reason.
I actually think that people are right to mistrust certifications and coffee. Have you ever seen those little labels, Because most of these little labels that allege that they're really sustainable, Riddell, they're so like higgledy-piggledy and half-assed. For example, organic. Yeah, it's great if coffee is not doused in crazy hazardous pesticides because, for one, that means that the workers aren't going to be poisoned, especially if they're kids. It's really bad to poison children. We should not poison kids. And
Definitely
also,
bad
like,
children.
yeah, let's not poison kids. That seems like a low bar. And it's good not to poison ecosystems, right? Because like the earth is not doing that well. We're in a mass extinction crisis. So organic is good in the sense that it's poison free and traceable. But what's really sad is that organic will tell you, like they will straight up tell you to your face, we do not pay a living income. It's just not our thing.
Mm.
I have the most bizarre conversations with people about that. Or they'll tell me like, nope, we can't guarantee no deforestation. That's just not our thing. I'm like, I'm sorry, excuse me. So wait, you're not guaranteeing human rights, due diligence, or no deforestation, or living income, or that people can unionize, or like, so you could have chemical-free coffee in a place that was like a dead ancient rainforest that was just chopped down, where they killed all those animals, and it's being harvested by people in extreme poverty using child labor, but it would be chemical free. So you're saying that's okay? It's like, what? So the thing is, because the certifications in coffee are so partial, it's as if you asked me to sing the alphabet and I was like, A, B, F, Q, R, S, Z. And you'd be like, Adela, you're on crack? What are you talking about? Like, you cannot know. That's not the alphabet. Like, you don't know. Are you not literate? I'd be like, but it's not my problem. So I think people are right to be a bit skeptical about certifications, that they're not a complete good solution. But instead of just being skeptical and then disillusioned and then walking away and saying, fuck it, I'm not going to deal with this at all, I think the answer is to press the certifications to do better. It's not about despair and like going into a downward spiral of doom scrolling about everything wrong with the certifications. It's about let's make them accountable. Let's campaign on the certifications so that they live up to true sustainability. I think in general, despair is toxic. It only hurts you. It breaks your heart. It weakens you. It means you have no power. It means you're walking away from your power. Despair is like the worst option. If you want to feel angry, that's okay. But I also think you have to feel a mix of anger and hope, because that is what they often say, that if you don't like envision a better world, if you don't hope for something better, then it's never going to come true, right? Because nobody will fight for it. So I think people are right to be angry and skeptical, but that shouldn't lead to checking out. It should lead to fighting harder.
Yeah, fair enough. I agree. Um, a lot was spoken of or spoken about in this conversation, and there's a lot of very interesting things there. And I definitely hope that there can be change. Of course, this process can be arduous, but it is meaningful, all things considered. Guess like the final bits before we start wrapping up this conversation is when it comes down to it, we did speak about what the average person can do in terms of like being involved or trying to or advocate for a solution. Um, but then the people who just like want to care but don't don't know exactly what to do. Now they're going to feel a little bit unsure, like, can I drink this coffee and not be considered a terrible person? So
They're not terrible people.
they what coffee brands or what companies do you recommend, and just like what in general in terms of like how people are should like think about coffee moving forward if they can or don't want to do these things but also don't want to have this kind of negative connotation, like how should they perceive engaging with coffee moving forward? So it's like a two-part question, but I do think
Yeah.
it's important.
I would say when I go out to a restaurant or a cafe or something like that, I almost always ask, do you have anything that's organic or fair trade? Because those are kind of common things that people in the hospitality industry know. And then usually the answer is they have like one kind of coffee that's like that. And I'll have that one. And so then that kind of is avoiding the worst, I would say, when I go out. But at home, here's what I do that I recommend for everybody. You only have to do the research once. So just take one afternoon on one weekend, set aside 1 hour and research ethical coffee that you think you feel matches your ideals. Like if you're a feminist and you are sad to hear that there's sexual and gender-based violence in coffee and in gender inequality, when I was talking about that, like think about Sofia Vergara's Dios Mío coffee, which is all about women's empowerment in Colombia, and order like one bag of that. If you heard about the pesticides and you thought like, oh, I can't believe we're poisoning kids and workers and ecosystems, that hurts me, I'm a beekeeper or whatever, I love butterflies, then like think about some organic coffees or like Smithsonian bird friendly certified. That's both organic and also deforestation free, and it's got a lot of shade. Order a bunch of those. You just do your research one time, 1 hour. You order like 10 bags of coffee, have a party with all your friends, like brunch or lunch or whatever, and you taste until you find the one you like the most. Then that's the one. It's ethical, it matches your values, you're buying from the heart, and you like how it tastes. And all you have to do is just order it every month. You get like however much coffee you drink. Do you drink 1 cup a day? I try to limit myself to one, but I often slide and do two. Some people I know, my grandmother used to drink like 6 cups a day. Oh my God. So just you set up a regular order. And then at home, you know that you have a coffee that matches your heart and your values. And you never have to do that research again. You've done it. You did it once. It was fun. You tested lots of different coffees. You found the one that you like the most. Boom, you're done.
All right. So those are really good suggestions, and it's something to keep in mind because even beyond the coffee industry, a lot of these other industries are doing things that can be seen as not the most ethical. So being very cognizant of a lot of these things moving forward should matter a lot more because, especially since people want to feel like they want to be more involved in something like politics and even other niches, people generally are now wanting to be more involved with like streamer celebrity lives and be more involved with like sports and sports awards, and they just want to be more involved. Well, this is another opportunity. You want to be more
Yes.
involved with what is going on. You're the one paying, you're the one consuming. So look into it, and that's how, and really find the businesses that really fit you, and don't let them tell you or don't let them kind of coerce you in, oh, this is the popular stuff, by me. So I do think that's a very good practice in general. As
And
we
again,
wrap
you
up,
know, if it works for you for coffee, that you've like done it and then you're like, wow, that was cool. I feel empowered and I feel like I'm leaning in and I'm being my best self, in the world, then maybe every year you can make it a different thing, right? Like this year is your year to figure out how to drink more ethical coffee. Maybe next year it's about your clothes and your apparel. Maybe the year after that it's about like your chocolate or your seafood. Do you know what I mean? Because exactly what you just said, Riddell, you said it. You can do this for everything you consume. Instead of feeling overwhelmed and being like, oh no, I'm gonna die, like thinking about too many questions, make it like a privilege and a fun thing that every year you get to clean up a different part of your life, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you got to do that when you're trying to stay healthy, and maybe not. I should probably pay attention on what protein power I get. Who knows? We'll see. Um, but all right, as we wrap up, I think this was a great conversation. Any final words? Any final things you have to say before we head out?
I just want to tell people that coffee does not have to be bad for people and planet. We can 100% make it good for farmers and for forests. It can taste great and it can be great, but it can't be great if people don't like wake up to how bad things are for human rights and the environment and do something. And my message is we need you. We need you really badly. So please wake up, step up, and join the party to make coffee like more ethical.
All right, excellent. Well, ladies and gentlemen, all Tal's information and the company she's with is in the description. So make sure you guys spread the word. Join if you think that this is something that aligns with your personal values and ideals. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you have, rate the podcast 5 stars, share with your friends and family. You have a good one. Take care and peace.